Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. This is Poppy Joy and Marie Freeman here today again. We're going to continue a very big conversation that we really need to get expressed at this time in humanity, which is information about entity attachment and just our personal experiences with it, because we really hope that it starts to make this conversation normal and make people feel safe to talk about it. So welcome, Poppy.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be back.
And we both have had a lifetime of, like I say, if you watched our first video, experiences with unusual, unseen, and in Poppy's case, surviving satanic ritual abuse, some most heinous and horrific crimes against humanity. And it's really time to talk about it, and we can't talk about it without talking about this, because this is what we've come to discover is really puppeting so much of humanity. And a lot of tribes, a lot of cultures, they know about these things, but a lot of our lineage and ancestry have had this squashed and narrowed and almost eradicated from our power to talk about. So entity attachment, voices in your head, the Wetico that tribes talk about, which is really a mind virus that comes from entities working within your own mind and within your own insecurities, and basically just turning the volume up and making a lot of people appear to have their worst insecurities really running their life. And so to some people, there's mild experiences of that where they're just experiencing anxiety, depression, natural fears, natural emotions, and others at the extreme end of the Wetico attacks are the people that could look to be mad and schizophrenic, and they're just really not grounded, in my opinion. They're just not grounded to cope with what's going on as an attack on their mind, and it's internalized as thinking it's their own mind that is creating all of their delusions and all of their own thoughts. And so we're jumping straight into it now, and I'm saying, we mentioned in the last video Jerry Marzinski, and we will put the details for Jerry below, because Jerry worked in psychiatric hospitals and prisons in the States, and he's an awesome guy. He's got a video channel, YouTube and others, and he's collaborating as well to try and just speak of his experiences when he was given groups of people in institutions to go and work with the schizophrenics and bipolar and in some of the insane wards. So what he found, I'll let you go and do your own research about Jerry, but what he found was that the voices were not so much coming from the person's mind, but was a clear attachment to the mind, and it was this paranormal entity, really. And so for him to step over that line, that's a whole interesting line to cross, because in modern psychology and psychiatry, you had these nice little boxes that they like to put you in, and they like to internalize everything as coming from your own mania and your own mind's delusions. But that's not the case, as we've discovered through living experience and people like Jerry speaking out of what he's discovered. So just wanted to put that there, that this is quite a broad topic, and Poppy and I have both got really different experiences of our own, and we were going to share another topic today, and it was to do with entities that attach at the sacral chakra and the root chakra, and also the heart chakra, actually all of our energy centers, about relationships and about sexuality and about I call them the lusty demons, not the crusty demons, but the lusty demons. And I really do want to get to that subject, but today I think it's calling us, whether we get to that on this video or we go into another one. Today we have decided that it's actually imperative that we talk about the systems and how the systems are and have been affecting humanity, to really categorize this conversation into what's the word? Well, mental health. And really it doesn't really fit into mental health, although I can see why they've tried to put it into mental health, because in the past that's where they've had to deal with a lot of the people that have lost their sanity through all of this madness of coping with these entities and having nobody really in mental health to explain it. So maybe we'll just put out a prayer today that, there's a lot to discuss. And hello, Kitty, you're back again. There's a lot to discuss, and my highest and deepest prayer is that in this video for you, that you get to hear a little bit of something that strikes a chord and makes sense to you about our journeys with mental health and with these phenomena of entity attachments, and as we learn more what we've discovered, to reassure people and really, make it, like I say, make this conversation normal, not paranormal or abnormal, you know but it is a big topic, so we'll do our very best. So my highest and deepest prayer is that only the truth of our experience flows through us for you today. So we'll get to Poppy in a moment, but I'll just back up a little bit and just say, with my birth mother's history and her dealing with mental health. So my mother was born and grew up through, the 60s, and the 60s having a lot of experience with drugs and coming out of some of their boxes of post-war rules and controls and things, and liberating a little bit more freely. With her experience, she had episodes in her young life when she was about 20 and 30 and 40 and all the way through, really, that had her incarcerated into Ward 10, and that's in Auckland, and that's in a psychiatric facility called Carrington. But going back, I just want to say that we talked a little bit on the first video about entity attachments, and what I've seen as a practitioner is that almost all the cases of this conversation with people about entity attachment, there's been some trauma in their life that this weakens their aura, and we talk about aura as think of it as an eggshell around you. You're the yolk, and the white is, this aura, and it has this lovely filament. It's not true, but this is just an analogy. And the eggshell can be cracked by our traumas that we hold on to. It takes the strength out of you, okay, when you've had a traumatic experience. And my mother had encountered child abuse very, very early on in her life and lived in Fiji. Nobody to talk to, didn't even realize that her brother and sister had also encountered this from people that would stay at their guest house. So very confusing time for her. She was probably only 7. And so it started to put cracks in her own sovereign self. And she started having psychic experiences and paranormal experiences. And again, nobody to talk to, not knowing what it is, just kind of got along and buried it. And then as she moved to Auckland as a teenager, found alcohol, drugs were a great way to relieve the stress of having some of these traumas that happened to her, and also relieving the stress of not knowing what this other thing was with this psychic stuff and the voices that started coming into her head. And I think that was the beginning of what mental health wants to label bipolar disorder, and it was previously called manic depressive disorder. So you can understand this polarity that starts to happen is you're trying to make sense of your experiences. You've got some unusual things going on with voices in your head, and some of them she actually wrote a memoir, and I read it after she passed away. So I've had a lot of conversation with her, and I've also had her memoirs and her notes through her healing journey. And really the thing that helped her was, it's going to sound cliche, but coming to Jesus. And that really did help quieten a lot of her voices, like it did with mine, like I mentioned in the last video, because that beloved figure is holding a lot of weight in the invisible realms with love, and it is a real protective actual force. Anyway, that's our belief, but it has actually been a belief that we've had evidence of, because it starts to still and quiet the voices, and it starts to still and quiet paranormal activity. So there's some weight to it in my life and in her life and in others as well. But going back to what I'm talking about the eggshell and about this Wetico, is that there are these cracks in people. That's everybody. You can't have a human being on earth really that I think is unaffected by trauma in some sense in their childhood. I almost feel like it's part of the human experience, that you might experience trauma and then learn to strengthen yourself back up again. You know, this sense of feeling not whole, and then spending time on your healing journey to become whole again, or to remember that you are actually whole, and that you just have had these emotional and traumatic holdings in your body. So just like a sponge, when you've got things in your sponge, like I call them the traumas, the entities can find a way through the cracks, and will, just like if you think of like a tadpole, you know, they are feeding off this little bit of energy, this food, which is the trauma. And they could be anywhere. They could be in your heart, they could be in your throat, they could be in your brain, wherever you've sort of held on to trauma. And I can talk about the journey therapy a little bit more to give you more information about how does the body hold on to trauma, and how it can be poked all over the body, because this is just, you know, trillions and trillions of cells like sponges, and they just can hold on to our past traumas. But while these traumas are there, and while we've got these cracks now in our eggshell, these outside forces that are floating around, and if you have, like Jerry says, in the infrared spectrum, if you have infrared special glasses, you can see these things, just like you can see, you know, the tiniest little, you know, when you see that across, yeah, well, not even the orbs, but like, I mean, just in nature, when you see the tiniest, minutest little thing flying through the air, that's a little insect. It's so tiny, you know, but again, in the invisible realms, there are these things floating around too. So yeah, Poppy's right. There's these things called orbs that contain souls, that contain entities. It's a whole nother thing. You can go research about orbs, and you can do your own research on entities. But here it is that my mother had a trauma. These voices of these entities, think of them again like a tadpole, came in and started just sucking energy out of her, and it really depleted her health. Okay, and that's where we're getting to, is that a lot of people that are in poor health are actually energy depleted, because you're supposed to have your energy running your body, you know, but what we're not aware of is that our traumas have a entity attached that is actually sucking and draining the energy. And the words we're going to get into, there's a whole lot actually. Incubus, succubus, demons, vampires, they're all just words that humans have tried to use to describe what this is. And again, I look at it quite neutrally sometimes, in that it's just nature having these other entities in an invisible realm that sees us as a source of energy. And if you were that, you would come find this source of energy, and you would feed off this energy as well, because I see that everything feeds off energy. So if we're not so afraid of it, if we just see it like that, like it is, it's a entity that is wanting a source of energy. We have a source of energy, low vibrating energy, and our trauma, it's sort of a lower, denser energy that they seem to use. Well, they use all of our energy, high energy and low energy, but low energy, there's this perpetuation that if we don't heal the trauma, and we don't even realize sometimes that we have the trauma, we can be perpetuating more energy. We're just like a battery. We're just keeping this like energy source going, because we're rehashing our old traumas, we're reliving our old pains, even not even consciously, sometimes in the dream time. This is what nightmares are. And these entities in Wetico know that if it can block our trauma as well from our healing, it can maintain a food source infinitely, really, and it can be attached, and it can really deplete the body's health. And so that's what I've seen. I saw it in my mother, and I've seen it in myself, and I've seen it in many, many survivors, and I've seen it in many children and people all over the place. But moving on to Mum's journey, she did try to speak to this with regards to counselors, friends, but it was always met with disbelief, and her frustration at being not believed made her speak louder, you know, and have outbursts of frustration. And so then she starts to get labeled as crazy, bipolar. You know, her journey was that she had nobody that she could talk to and that believed her. And so as she's trying to express honestly her experiences, it's all getting written down in a little white book, and then she gets put into a mental institution. And there they electric shock treated her. And, you know, really she just needed somebody to take the time to sit down, you know, maybe a specialist, maybe there is somebody within, well, maybe there obviously wasn't at that time, but somewhere, someone that could have taken the time to listen to her rather than just immediately judge what she was saying as crazy. That's sort of why I'm getting into this work, because I want to, in her name, I want to honor that she wasn't crazy. She was confused. She was lost. She was traumatized from all of her child abuse and drug abuse. And the drug abuse really only became medicine to heal the trauma and the pain and the suffering of the child abuse. So it wasn't the drugs that were necessarily giving her psychotic episodes, but they didn't help. They certainly didn't help. And they then weakened the eggshell, and more through alcohol and drugs, more of you becomes cracked open and susceptible to even further entities. And I think we talked a little bit about like the ones that come through alcohol, and the ones that come through drug abuse, not just entities, but disembodied spirits, you know, people that have passed away through alcohol related disease, you know, deaths and things like that. So there's a whole lot of invisible realm that if we all had infrared, like Jerry Mazinski said, if we all had infrared glasses, we'd never step outside our house, you know, because like I say, even just in the air, you can't see all the little spiders and you can't see all the little microbes that fly around just within the air. But then if you were to see the infrared spectrum, the animals can pick them up. You know, I think they have a different cone system in their eyes, probably because they live outside. And so they've had to keep their senses, they've sharpened their senses, and they've had more of their senses stay open, and we've sort of dulled them down because we live inside and have the comforts that we have, that we haven't had to have our senses as sharp as the animals. But so there are these, like Jerry said, you know, the people with schizophrenia, and even people that are not schizophrenic or labeled schizophrenic. People can see with their third eye, with your eyes closed sometimes, this realm, or just on a one-off chance, just somebody who's not even experiencing psychic phenomena in their life will see something weird and crazy, or a lot of people taking recreational drugs or having alcohol, to the point where they start to see into those realms because everything's loosened a little bit, the mind is loosened, and so you're sort of not so rigid in your habits of control, and then you can start to see these things. So there's been countless stories, and I'm hoping that this conversation will get the conversation going with other people in your life, where you can go, did you have these experiences? What are your experiences? And so we can just start to talk about what appears to be crazy and make it interesting, because it is interesting. And in the past, religion has wanted to put a lot of fear into you about this and make it really dangerous to start talking about and communicating with, but really it's just our world, it's in our world, so we have every right to explore our world, explore our mind, explore our stories and experiences and talk about it. And ultimately, if we're grounded and we're trying to empower you to be really grounded, to just be brave to have these conversations, so that you can start to understand yourself and understand these things that you didn't know about so much before. You know, we're trying to educate ourselves and build up a safe community to discuss this, because we've definitely in the past been persecuted, prosecuted, you know, medicated. My mother was put on zombie-like medications, you know, just to really, in her words, she wasn't having a violent outburst or anything. They were just trying to help stop the voices. And really, by numbing her down, left her more susceptible to cracking her aura. And she came out of those institutions with more freaking demons and attachments and voices than she went in with, if
Mm.
I'm honest. And the rest of her life, she didn't feel supported by those systems. She had lithium assigned to her. She would go on and off it because the lithium would dull everything in her life, and she didn't really have a quality of life. And then when she went off the lithium, she, you know, all the energy came back into her, but then so did these voices and things. So it was a harrowing time, a yo-yoing time for her. And her journaling really helped a lot. She wrote a lot in her journals, which is why I've got this information from her background. So yeah, my ode to her is to talk about my journey as well, her journey in part. Lovely people like Jerry, meet with beautiful people like Poppy, who've had another extraordinary. Actually, I would say that my mother, well, she did experience satanic ritual abuse in her life as well. So it's a real ode to all the people that have suffered silently, without the right support, because we just haven't had a lot of the education about this stuff, and we have been afraid to talk about it. And then the church has told us it's dangerous to talk about it. And then psychology will say if you believe that, you're mad. And so it's just been avoided, and I don't want to avoid it anymore. So I'm going to hand over to you, Poppy, because um, as a survivor of satanic ritual abuse, and with the wonderful community that's starting to develop of other wonderful survivors and overcomers, your experience has been unique, and it doesn't have a lot of education in our mental health system at all about what satanic ritual abuse is. You survivors are the people educating the systems about this, really. Because of the nature of it, it doesn't want to be known. It wants to stay in the shadows. So it's not certainly going to be educated, because we've found out, you know, that a lot of infiltrators are related to the people that are perpetuating the harm. And so systems haven't always been helpful. There's the naive in the system that just don't know about this. And then there's, unfortunately, around the whole world, there's been people speak of people within our systems of mental health and medical and psychiatry, and I'm thinking, you know, in England with the Tavistock Institute, you know, that that posed as modern psychiatry to analyze and what's that word, investigate the human mind, and they've really been found out now to be a huge part of the mind control agenda that's destroyed. I don't know. It's just destroyed the purity and the simplicity of a child's mind and a adult sufferer's mind. Experiments that have really been put upon people that are under the name of science, that actually have not been going with their decree that they make to do no harm, that they've actually had people working in these institutions that are coming out of the occult and coming out of the groups that work together in the Masonic and all these dark underworld things that are starting to come to the surface now. We're really kind of unpacking and being shocked by what we're discovering that all is not what it seems, and there is a lot of good people in our systems really trying to work with what they've got to help, but they're still limited in their education because this paranormal stuff and this occult stuff has been inverted and used in harm against us. So it's again something that's just been swept aside so that we never really get to the bottom of it and get healing from the systems that people look to get help from. So people like us outside of the systems, general people that just want to discuss their past and discuss their family's past and try to piece it all together and make sense of it. And like I say, it really helps with whistleblowers that have been used in horrible mind control experiments to harm children and people that have been in systems or even outside of systems, in churches and all sorts of other places. There's a big sort of exposure going on, and it sounds crazy, and yes, you're going to label it conspiracy, but it isn't. It isn't a conspiracy. It's the secret societies. It's the secret. Occult just means hidden knowledge of how to utilize the forces. And so these unseen realms and unseen forces, we're only just wrapping our heads around now to try and understand and take it out of that realm of crazy and, don't sweep us aside. Let's try and understand together. Let's try to make sense of it. Let's try to be brave to talk about our own experiences so that we can get through this and eradicate some of the people that are still working in systems that are working with mind control, that are actually, they don't even realize that they're using programs that are written by these people that worked in these Tavistock institutes that have banded together to control keeping people in poor health and lower states of emotional health and trauma. And it's really looking like, it's a big topic to get to talk about the nature of what appears to look like helpful information and helpful supporting people in mental health systems, but they really are limited. And like I say, there's lots of good people within those systems working within limitations, but they can only go so much because those that are above them have understood that keeping people from healing, keeping people from recovering from their traumas generates this energy, whether it's in a system that wants you to be a financial tick on a page that means that funding will come to that institution, or whether it's even more nefarious, whether these entities have attached to some of these CEOs and underlying doctors and mental health specialists. I've definitely seen it through my brother's time with being in a mental institution. He's an intellectually handicapped child, and the rapes and abuse and definitely not supportive mental health workers, more attracting perpetrators and pedophiles, and that you could say that was coincidental or accidental, but I don't think that's the case. I think that a lot of these groups have and we've just had the what is it, Poppy, the massive big
Ending of
case,
cycle. Sorry.
the massive big case of the commissioner's
Oh,
royal
yes.
inquiry into the abuse into Lake Alice. And so there's a lot coming out that has shown us that perpetrators have been in institutions where we've looked to be supported by mental health, and really that they've been part of the big problem, causing a lot of harm and reinforcing traumas in a lot of these children. Anyway, it's a bit dark, it's a bit uncomfortable, but it is a reality, and we are speaking from experiences of ourselves, people we know close to us, Poppy's experience, and we are here for the exposure. And part of the exposure is going into these what appears to be the old crazy realms, but actually try to normalize it to say there are these things that get into the mind and that change people's behaviors and keep people looping around in trauma and appearing to look that their grasp on reality has come unstuck. It has, it really has, because this is so big. To try to understand this as a child, to try to understand this as an adult, it does get easier. I was about to say it doesn't get easier, but it does get easier, and we want to be part of the solution. That is it getting easier to understand and normalizing it, and believing in other people that are having crazy stories, crazy experiences, because it's not your normal. It is paranormal. It is out of the ordinary. So with that, I want to hand over to Poppy, because if you, Poppy, can just touch on a little bit of before you've gotten into systems and tried to reach out to systems to get help, and be supported, what your earlier story, for those that haven't heard a little bit of your satanic ritual abuse childhood as a survivor, where you've come from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to say, straight off the bat, when we say, look, we're getting into dark stuff, I just want to actually say that all the survivors that I've met and that I've known are people that have really come through because of their amazing capacity to love. And they've had this amazing capacity to love, which really means source connection. And so it really does balance out the dark and the light into no more polarity, but coming into that oneness. So I think survivors are amazing. And I've actually wanted to commend them because, and the people that support us, because they are not afraid, but because of the amount of entity clearing that they do and the amount that they deal to these powers and these principalities, because they've had these first-hand experiences with it. And part of their recovery is actually to deal with them and to clear them from.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about earlier. I'll let you carry on, but I agree with you 100%. I actually think the more that we can get people to come and talk, they'll realize they are part of the solution to normalize this, because of the system's boxes and not having a framework to deal with this information. We've had to do it on our own, and so people that speak from their experiences are understanding it for others and teaching it for others on what this is really about, and ending it, so that we are not keeping it in mental health. It is life. And
we aren't just a mental case, and this is partly what happened. Okay, so I got fucked up by the system, and then I got trauma bonded to the system to help me. So it's like being fucked up to be fixed up. And now what I'm saying is that this was the rituals in my life and everything that started. It came through the Rothschild line. It came through Freemasonry, and it started at an incredibly young age. It was contributing to financial and colonial legislation.
And we'll just say there, that people that don't believe about the Freemasonry, it's from the 33rd degree up that the secret society of the Freemasonry is operating, isn't it? Because some people
Yeah,
will say,
yeah. Thank you for that point,
yeah,
because there's a lot of people that are Masons and they have no idea where they're
yeah,
headed or where they're going. And this is
well, they're a
how
front, they're
they
a front as well.
actually work. Yeah. So that came into my life at a very, very young age. So I started to be shattered, fractured, going into parts, really. And this is how the system even operates, is they compartmentalize. They want everything in little boxes over here. So this personality is operating over here, but you don't have any idea of what it's doing over there, and that people can actually be used. This is how people become assassins. I've also realized that part of mine was it was gearing up because I was actually prostituted to someone who was a Commonwealth Games champion. And I also have had more memories now of being raped. And those people that were involved in that rape were all drugged, and they won't even know that they were a part of it. And this is how they've done it. And when it comes to electric shock treatment that you were talking about, that they do to your mum, that actually eliminates the short-term memory. So this is something that gets used a lot in MK Ultra programming.
Yeah.
I had to experience, part of my experience was MK Ultra programming. So after some of these terrible violent rituals where you're really beat up and often brought to the point of death, you may have died, you may have come back, you'll be passed out, you'll be in a very, very, very beat up state, and then going into these places where they're actually kind of like you've been really fucked up, and then they're kind of fixing you up. But at the same time as they're fixing you up, they're giving you electric shock treatment so you can't remember what happened. They're doing more programming. They're using all sorts of lights and frequencies and things that are attached to your head. And
I'll just pop in there and I'll say, and there are survivors on that Royal Commission that talked about that kind of thing in Lake Alice as well, you know?
yeah, yeah. So all of these things are happening to compartmentalize, and then like it's incredible. Like for most of my time I kept right out of the system because I felt that the system was going to put me into mental health institutions and pin all sorts of states on me. And it has actually been done a little bit. I have been framed, and that has actually been done a little bit. So I tried to keep out of that system. So what actually happened was that I did get involved, and I decided that I was going to trust the system a little bit through a therapist who was actually a handler. I didn't, I realized later on that she had become a handler. I'd lost my sense of agency. She was kind of like trying to call the shots, but I was still trying to go into my natural therapies and the things that were working for me. And she was getting upset about all of that. So I had gone in to have assessments within the system and all of that. And, trying to conquer these fears that I'd end up being treated like a mental health case. However, these systems, they are from the government. They are all run by shadow governments. And now, like I realized from my own research that the shadow governments are very Masonically based. They are behind all governments, really. And so, of course, they use all of this MK Ultra, which has sort of come from the CIA. They use all these techniques sometimes directly on people. They use roofies and drugs and LSD and all sorts of mind-altering things to really fracture you. That things are kind of interdimensional. You get open. When you were talking about the eggshell, I just couldn't help stop thinking of like Humpty Dumpty had a big fall. Okay, Humpty Dumpty had a big trauma, and no one could put him back together, especially not the king's men, because they were the ones that probably caused it in the first place. But
Yeah.
but yeah, like, so I went through various stages, like when I was in my 30s and I was on antidepressants and sleeping tablets, and there was beings coming through the door, and there was all sorts of entities which you would see with your infrared glasses, but you can actually see it through the pineal gland. um, and and when those sorts of things were really harassing me, and really around, like, it was pretty fearful, but they also were around because of the very low vibration that I was in. Because I was so depressed, I was in despair often at night. I've had years and years and years of not even being afraid to close my eyes, looking at the shadows outside the windows in case I was going to be taken, because it's actually happened more than I even know at this stage. Um,
And you
so
mean taken physically, eh? Because a lot of
yeah,
survivors were taken, drugged as children, and taken to be
yeah,
used in these Masonic rituals. Yeah.
yeah, and a lot of that taking was when you're in a kind of a drug state, and being in a drug state, so you're being raped by men, gang raped by men, and you know, I was just lying there, and kind of just not in my body, nowhere there. All the motions and all the actions are going through, but my body remembers the pain. My body remembers all of these things, and then that comes up later. But because you're drugged with roofies or whatever, you won't remember. The people that are involved won't remember. But it's all been done for a specific purpose. Um, and like, part of my programming was to be drawn to men. That I could get something met in my needs from men, um, sexually. And so I was kind of looking often for savior type men. I ended up with a pastor, then I ended up with someone who was a metaphysical reverend. Another time it was sort of like a Reiki master that I was really attracted to. And so, like, these were programs, these were all programming that got put in there until I call this like the Cinderella program, that there was always going to be the prince who was coming along to rescue me. And um, like, I had actual experiences where there was like the savior, and it was the Lord's Supper scenario. The savior was coming to try to save my life, but he didn't manage to save my life. Instead, he was the sacrifice and the supper.
And
So
I'll just preface there for those that are watching. What Poppy's speaking of is a lot, but if as we're discovering, meeting other survivors around the world, her story's not isolated and uncommon. This is actually a playbook that the Masonic and the occult have distributed around the world, that these are the MK Ultra programs that will be put into through subliminal and through splitting off these parts of these children through trauma. So we're
yeah,
hearing the same stories from survivors around the world of the same kind of savior programs, the same kind of religious instruction, even through churches that are coming through. They're coming through the MK Ultra words subliminally in church preaching, and behind the scenes stuff with taking these children and doing these programs. So while you're listening to Poppies, I just wanted to say that's what we're finding. Is we're finding Poppy would have thought she was having she did have a unique individual experience, but then when you hear somebody in America had exactly that same kind of upbringing and experience and programs and Cinderella programs, savior programs, and all these sorts of things that they really have, through the Tavistock Institute, destroyed these little children into all these parts, and they're basically, you're just an experiment. They're just experimenting how they can do this worldwide. And it definitely, now that all the survivors are starting to talk, you go, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one going through that experience and struggling
mm,
with it. So I just wanted
yeah,
to say that it's a big
yeah,
story, but that Poppy is now finding some reassurance to know that this is horrific what she's been through, but this is why
Mm.
the emotions come up to be of devastation, that this is occurring on purpose around the world to other children as well.
Yeah, and they do. You know, there's a purpose for every single one. You know, I know that for me, a lot of it has to been to stop me putting forth knowledge that's actually really relevant for this time. Um, but around about 2000, well, in 2017, I left my partner, and I came back and tried to sort everything out because the satanic ritual abuse memories were really, they were really, really like a pressure cooker inside, wanting to come up to the surface, and they just kept coming out, and there was just all sorts of information. And so what happened around about 2018, and I, you know, I was homeless, but I was like doing different house sits and moving around. I actually really started to become aware of voices that weren't mine, and it was like, is that my voice or is that not, you know? And I started to think, oh my gosh, you know, not every voice that I'm hearing in my head is mine. And
Mm.
what are these voices saying? Because they were always very damning, they were always very condescending, they were always really nasty and um, tricky, and you know, like I really started to question what's what, and I felt that I really needed to go into a time, like really be in a hermit mode. And also my health was so bad, so I actually was kind of put into a hermit mode, and I decided that I wasn't going to look at all this outer information anymore. I used to research a lot. I was in touch with, you know, the group Anonymous. I knew that all these regimes and agendas were coming up, but you know, like I kept, so I decided to just pull back and go into myself, and start to listen. And because I also was a public sharer of information to do with the Sacred Mind calendar, I really wanted to be making sure that it was coming through with the greatest amount of integrity. And so I've always meditated with the earth, always, before I've put things out. And I have to be in that really feeling strongly aligned before I would put anything out. But I do know that earlier on, the messages were still being affected, and they've become clearer because there were parts in me that were just like super angry at what had happened. I would lose presence and lose myself, from being challenged to shut up and that this stuff doesn't matter and get over your story, even before it had come out. And what would happen is that when I'd get challenged, a part would rise up that was really angry and quite defensive, and sometimes it would sabotage me, because it just wanted to it just wanted to rage, because I'd never
Mm.
had a chance to rage. But I'd get ungrounded, and sometimes, when I've noticed this has actually been a theme lately, when people get dismissive and when they don't listen, and when you know, and I've been in, you know, I had a heart attack, I've been in quite a vulnerable state, this part just I lose presence. So this part just wants to shout and protect my little one that has been so
Yeah,
hurt. And but then I lose presence, and that's when I can come across as like, you know, especially if I haven't had any sleep for ages, and I really don't function, I don't do well, and then I can actually look like I'm crazy.
I know
So
that's the frustrating part, because we've kept it all in for so long, and because we don't fully understand it all ourselves, and we're on a healing journey, and with parts integration and the MK Ultra that you've had, we don't really understand ourselves. It's confusing. It's terrifying. And we're trying our very, very best. And what I'm saying is, there's a way through, and integration is what's happening with these survivors.
Yeah,
You've come such a long way that with the thanks of understanding, some of these secret societies have you know the survivors of these people that have committed these crimes against them are speaking out. Kathy O'Brien speaking out in America about political officials and being raped and tortured and used in mind control um, training, and Jeanette Archer in the UK coming out with some really bold claims about royals and political figures and others. This is outrageous stuff, but because of those whistleblowers, and Jesse Jaboda in America talking about the CIA and the secret societies within the shadow governments and all that. And again, we're not going to be wearing those labels of conspiracy theorists. These are people's valid experiences and truthful accounts, and some of them are going through court, been through court, had their cases heard. People are being prosecuted. There has been a lot going on behind the scenes that people don't understand and know about, that has come out about this stuff, but more and more and more stuff is coming out. If people are looking and listening, you'll hear it on the radio. You'll hear about circles of pedophiles that have been brought to court, and found out. And Rachel Vaughan in Australia, her case with her father that actually was a butcher and used to, basically murder children buried in his backyard. She's won a great big compensation case within Australia. So there's a lot of truth and evidence out there, and from these stories of survivors, it supports Poppy and this frustration that she feels from exactly what she just said, the child that's been brutalized and tortured, and nobody has believed her in our mental health systems because it's not your normal case. And so, being a groundbreaking case that she and a few others in New Zealand have been, you don't hear about them. And so they've had to suffer being not believed and not supported, and worse than that, being pushed aside, being harassed, being dismissed. And so that's where that rage comes. And it was the same with my mother. When they appear to be acting neurotic and erratic and all those lovely words, it's because of this frustration. Put yourself in that position. That's what I would ask any therapist. I would ask any counselor. I would ask any doctor. I would ask any psych ward, prison officer, any human out there. Put yourself in the position of a child that has had your childhood stolen from you, been taken from your home, drugged, raped, tortured. Like Poppy is a survivor, incredible survivor of the most heinous things. If you were in that position, would you not be angry and furious? Would you not be desperate and pleading to be believed and understood when you're speaking your truth? Think
yeah,
about it.
because it has been a conspiracy theory for long enough, and the system doesn't actually know how to deal with us. And I don't think that underneath they really want to. The way of the system is still compartmentalization. And, I got fractured. I got scattered into all kinds of parts and pieces. So to kind of put all your memories over here and all of this over here, so that they don't interact and they don't connect, is still keeping the person in the misery. It keeps you shut down.
Well, it keeps you from telling the truth about the perpetrators, doesn't it?
Yes, it keeps that, and it keeps you quiet, and it keeps you not making any waves. But I feel that it's really, really important that all of this gets known, because if it doesn't get known, it's happening to more children and it keeps going. So actually, the memories and everything that I've had, I want to use them for the good. So these are things that need to be integrated, all of it integrated within me, so that it has its place of balance and harmony in my system. And I'm aware, okay, so at the moment, I have parts that are still speaking loudly, some of them that are wanting attention. That part of me that has the pure agency and is actually responsible for my life and not trauma bonded, the one that is telling all my other parts, you're okay, and I love you, and I've got you, and we can do this. I need to keep this one like really at the forefront, and have all these other parts just come in and grow up with her, like just come in and be with her, so that, you know, I am the one, you know, and this is my source that can't be siphoned anymore. So like you're saying, you know, when you have all of these cracks in your shell because of a trauma, it's kind of like, it's like that lower vibing energy can just come in. And it is, you know, like it might be in the form of entities, demons, beliefs, all sorts of things that are put on people. So for me, to have that time where I could just look at all the voices, like, and hear the different voices, and it's kind of like you tune into the different frequencies, and you realize what frequency that's coming from, and what is its tone, and what is it saying, and what is its message, and why are you so upset? You know, you start having these conversations. I start having conversations, and I've been having conversations this week. Why are you so upset? And then it starts to speak, and then I find out, and often I'll find out a traumatic memory that's underneath it that really does actually need to come to the surface, so that the charge can be released. And when the charge is released, then my vibration is higher, I'm less vulnerable. You know, it's like I'm sealing up the gaps in my field. And I have to have a super, super strong field, because there are still people that do not want me to live. And you let your guard down, you'll get something like a heart attack, you know, and or some other area that you might be vulnerable in. So it's, for me, it's to have everything within a very strong golden auric field. And this is how I see even the Jesus Christ energy, is this golden, strong energy that is with me and mentoring me and encouraging me and holding me, requiring no worship, actually, just actually saying, wow, you've actually done what I asked you to do. You've done, you know, you've come, you've done some of those greater works I talked about, you know, where I know that I purposely came here along with many other survivors, and to be part of clearing up this mission, to be part of being able to see it. Okay, so these things happened at such a young age. I've still had the sight. So these glasses they have a color, filter which blocks out certain light, because I see the swirls and I see energy at the same time. But in this world, to get around, I have to just see what's this 3D, you know. So I'm seeing two things at once. I'm living many lives at once in some ways. Like, there's all these parts of me that have been suppressed that, you know, after all of this time in my life, they need to have their little voice. They need, well, not even a little voice. Sometimes it's a big, strong, loud voice that's going to say, no, I do not consent to that grip of death. I do not consent to the medical hold. And while I'm talking about that, they are powers and principalities. So the power that a doctor has is more, this is what one of a friend who's been through SRA told me. So a court, like a court judge, they have certain powers. Actually, I want to just tell you, I was talking to someone who was actually working in the Whangarei court, district courts, and she's been working in there. I asked her, how did you get there? She said, oh, I was asked to get there. I was asked for the job. So she was asked for that job. And she said, and now I've received my powers. And I went, oh, that sounds a bit like Harry Potter. And, like they receive powers to be a judge. So they receive powers to judge.
Wow.
And a doctor has the power to pronounce life or to pronounce death. And this is actually a big, so they have like a God-like complex overall. And this is part of what comes with their oaths. They do not take the Hippocratic Oath anymore. My ex-partner checked up with the New Zealand and said, do you take the Hippocratic Oath? Because I don't see you living it. They don't. They have more of an oath that they are faithful to their tradition, that kind of thing. Okay, so what is their tradition? Their tradition is to take a uterus out of a woman deemed to be hysterical. Their tradition is to put leeches on you. Their tradition is to bore holes into your brain to let things out. These traditions are barbaric.
Bloodletting.
Yes, bloodletting. My parents wanted me to be a doctor, and I wanted to be a doctor because I was interested in health. But then when I started to read about the history of the medical, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so dark. And it was really, I think it was just really connecting with the things that they did to me, because in the MK Ultra places where you're very drugged and it's not everyone around you is really human, it's torture. There's torture. Like they will stick a chain around, like I had a chain stuck around my abdomen and just like digging into me while you're on this hard kind of gurney, and then got like a bit, it felt like a bridle in my mouth, where they are electric shock treating you. You're already hurt, you're already in an immense amount of pain, and this is like all like medically done. So when I had the heart attack fairly recently, while I was in the hospital, this was an opportunity to heal some of this MK Ultra stuff. So there were some things that happened in the hospital which put me back into those memories, and I'm very grateful because Marie was there for me in those times, and I needed to work with them. Like for example, they now have a temperature thing that they take your temperature. It has lights on it, and they try to stick it right over your pineal gland. Every time they came at me with that, it was just a PTSD response. I would go, oh, and once I actually went like that and kind of, like it caught her arm, and she apologized. And I said, oh, look, please don't put lights in my face. It's PTSD. And another time while I was in the hospital, just before I was going to have an angiogram, the woman who was, there's a lot of people that are mentally unwell in the hospital, because you actually, all the energies that are around are very difficult to be in. But this woman fell down to the ground and probably broke her hip, and she screamed and screamed and screamed on the floor, and all the medical people came rushing, and I felt like they just shoved my bed, closed the curtains, and this woman's screaming, and it just puts me back into hearing someone being murdered. Like this just reminds me of someone being murdered. And I just I'm crying behind the curtain, like going into shock before I'm going to have my angiogram. And then, and then I also had complications and injuries from that. you know, before you have a medical procedure, you want to be as calm as possible. But, you know, like this is the chaos, you know, and what I'm finding that was in this hospital system, there's no rest. There's no rest. There's
No.
people where you don't feel safe. There's people that are mentally ill around you. Um, there's not enough staff. It's all but done. Um, and it's actually like a very dangerous and hostile situation that you're kind of coming in. So again, for me, it was really feeling like they fuck you up to fix you up. And then I'm quite trauma bonded. I was quite vulnerable. So I went home with really, you know, serious injuries. I couldn't use my arm for a couple of weeks. It developed cellulitis where I had the hematoma. It was just excruciatingly painful. I couldn't open my arm. There were adhesions where it leaked, you know, where the artery had leaked, you know, it had stuck to other bits of my flesh, and that all had to be undone. And no one was here. There was no one to look after me. And my neighbor is like, why is there no one to look after you? Where's your daughter? And this is it. Like, you get fucked up to be fixed up. And then because of the whole way that everything is, remember now, I've been trying to recover with severe physical limitations for quite a while. I don't have a social life. I've had to move out of the community I was in. There isn't anyone around. I just asked for some home help, and all I get out of asking for some home help, which I absolutely needed, was more psychological analysis, more people checking out. So, what do you do to look after yourself? Look, I meditate, I do yoga when I can. All of these things. Oh, you're doing everything. Yes, I know, but why are you doing? I need some physical help. No, that's not going to be there. And it becomes like a real mind fuck. But these are the principalities, and these are the holds that are in that symptom, that in that system. And it's almost been a gift to me, because it's made me realize I live in a natural world of integration and connection, and this is what we can come back to. And so, you know, like, stuff those statins that they wanted to put me on, which are nasty drugs that you can't let go of and you get dependent on, and they dumb you down and all of that. I found all my natural remedies now, and I will not take their medical remedies. They're not there for me when you need them. It's like, oh yeah, I need to see a doctor. Oh, okay, well, he's ready in a month, you know. Well, you know, this is it. But the systems are falling down. They are unnatural. And they are generally hostile towards people who are self-aware. So I've had to be incredibly self-aware to find out what all the parts are saying and what they are doing, because it's been complicated. I've had all of this memory over here I can't remember, and all this stuff that's compartmentalized. So more compartmentalization is not going to help me in the slightest. It needs to be integration. So I'm very, very grateful to Marie, who popped up in my life at a pivotal time with the journey therapy, which I was already really familiar with and had used, because I used to be a retreat facilitator and offer that to my guests and see miracles come out of that. So here she was, and this was all about accessing the memories. It's actually like seeing them so that the charge is taken out, so that I'm no longer this emotional wreck that I used to be, who couldn't function, where I was incredibly vulnerable, where I'd just lose presence with people and come across as a nutcase. My challenge at the moment is to maintain presence when people try to put their agendas on me, and to actually hold my own and to stay in my own sense of agency, and to get free of all trauma bonding to, especially to the system that we're at a time now where we do have to find our ways. I really believe that as communities, we have to find our soul tribe. We need to be able to hold and mix and mingle, have the
Mm,
natural health remedies to share, like create community again. The old ways, the ways that we did in the shamanic era, before everything was a psychological operation. Um,
mm,
yeah, so everything became psychological operations from 3115 BC, where humanity became very left brain dominated. The patriarchy was born, and we weren't allowed to be emotional. Oh gosh, no! Let's just take all that femininity right out of the equation. When actually our emotions are a guidance system, and
yeah, that's
yeah, and like
you're
you
on
can contain.
something there.
Let's
Yeah,
contain their emotions. Let's keep them quiet. Let's keep them okay. Well, that means your sickness isn't going to lift, because you're going to be still resisting and not letting go of that charge. Yeah. So,
absolutely. You speak of a lot that a lot of people can probably relate to, the frustration of the awareness that we have been trauma bonded on purpose to these systems, and a lot of people will find it really hard to believe that there's anything unhelpful that the medical system is doing. But it's because, like you say, we've gotten so far away from treating people with honor and respect and listening, and having experts, in the holistic. We've taken those compartments, and this person's an expert in this and this person's an expert in that, but they're not communicating and they're not treating you holistically. Um,
and we
and
are the expert on our own life. Like
yeah,
I feel persecuted for being so self-aware, like for being feminine, for being intuitive, living
yeah,
in the moment, not living out plans and agenda. I don't want to manipulate anyone. I've had my life manipulated and coordinated. So, like I want to come back to what is normal, what is natural, what is beautiful. Like, and it is actually to be able to feel, to be able to be intuitive, to know myself, to observe myself, observing myself, to observe, and to be, not have to be this person that's just held in this bubble so that you're kind of effective slave for society. But no, we can actually come back to these beautiful shamanic ways of nature, um, which, this to me is the sanity. The insanity is the unnatural. It is, continually compartmentalizing,
yeah.
and not
Fighting,
uh, not able
fighting
to
against
see me as
those
just,
compartments
yeah, because I'm a
makes
whole
it,
being. I'm a whole being, you know.
yeah,
And like people coming in and taking authority, well, actually I was quite surprised, because I think I'm the one that's responsible for my life, and the choices that I make. So it just gets very dangerous. I find that whenever the unnatural world starts to creep in and starts to try to take over, and next thing you're on these artificial medications which are splitting you away from your experiences, and doing the opposite of what's needed. Just like what happened to your mum, the opposite of everything that was needed. She needed arms around her. She
yeah,
needed to be held. She needed to be seen. She needed to have a safe place where she could talk about her experiences, and someone could say, "Oh my gosh, you poor girl. How
yeah,
can we get you back up? How can we love you back to life? How can we bring you back together, because you're actually 100% valid and vital human being, just like
yeah.
all of us are."
And that's the thing that brings out that frustration in people, is that the systems today are under the pump, and it's kind of on purpose. It's all designed to break down, because it has been such an unhealthy control system that we're starting to see that control, that it isn't working, it isn't helping, and it needs to, um, it is forcing us to be emotional, to come out in the angers and the frustrations, which doesn't help us, but it's what's occurring, because if we just get a 5-minute slot, nobody's really sitting down looking in our eyes and listening anymore. Nobody's really believing you. This is what I'm saying is
And then when you start speaking about the unseen world, which has had
yeah,
the greatest clout on SRA survivors, because it's all occult, it's all unseen, it's all
yeah,
interdimensional, it's really crazy making. And then
yeah,
you have to shut up about that very foundational thing, because it's not seen as sane, that you can see and you are aware and you hear. They want to divert you from that. It does not want to be seen. The system
no,
will hide itself within itself. And so,
yeah.
like, to be
You've
able
been
to go,
programmed to be silent. And if
yeah,
you've been also programmed, the survivors, that when we're all collaborating and understanding, we've been programmed to think, if I do ask for help, I will be locked up, I will be labeled crazy, I will suffer greater. And sometimes that has been the case, like this is like my mother, like, where where the child within her is reaching out saying, somebody, please, can you explain this to me? Is there somebody that understands this? That's why she looked to the Bible. She was trying to find out, does anybody actually understand this and have a way out of this?
yeah,
And so, as we're discovering the systems within the medical system, the psychiatry system, the psychology system, they don't have the way out of it because they want to keep you in it. And
yeah,
that's to say that they don't even realize the training of their own training is keeping people under control. They don't even realize they're part of the bigger puppeted system of these entities that wish to keep humanity down in low states, and not in their freedom and not in their power.
yeah.
Um,
I actually felt, that I needed to be like almost like the light in the system, and that, I almost felt like I needed to even educate them a little bit about this, because it was a conspiracy and 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 all of that. So I did put trust in them that this change was happening, that it was arising out of it. I found that there are people in the system who are like that, but then if you walk across a certain line, they might freak out for their own safety. So um so they
yeah,
are
it doesn't fit a
they get
box.
controlled. Like, there'll be a shutdown point for them at some point,
Yeah,
even though they're great people, amazing people that are they know about all of this. The more the psychology that's come out, where the body does remember, that the body holds all of these things. I mean, gosh, was it almost 30 years ago that Brandon Bayes wrote her book about all of this, the body remembering, and I was really tuned into it a good 20 or so years ago. I was absolutely tuned into, yes, that the body remembers, because my body was remembering, it was showing me things, and I
yeah,
started to work on things way back then. But it is the world of attachments, of entities, and um, so a lot of these things, you have the real beings, but then you also have, then they become like demonic presences. You can literally see them as like dark energies. Like, look, I want to actually say, I'm going to say this out loud. I I've been a caretaker. When I lived in the Hokianga, I had a connection with the harbour, and I had this natural propensity to protect it, to love, to pray, to work with the waters. And I didn't live very far away from the hospital. I'm like, what is this absolutely soot black energy that goes into the harbour from the hospital. And I've mentioned it to two or three for different people, and they also see it. They also know it. But I'd say that in that harbour, the worst and the darkest energy is all coming from that hospital area. Okay, there's a
Yeah.
sewer plant, there's other things. It's like, yeah, they affect it, but not as much as the energy that is coming from that hospital. And these are the things
Okay.
I notice that other people don't see unless
Yeah.
they have the sight. And when they do have the sight, then we can actually work together and we can
Yeah.
clean this up, you
And
know.
that's what we're finding with listening to other survivors and intuitives like Rachel Vaughan. And I'm listening to Rachel, I'm listening to um, Jesse, and I'm listening to other survivors. And what's the common theme is that a lot of these rituals that were done on, so one child or a group of children or a group of adults, they're performed in nature on a ley line so that the trauma energy goes into the earth, goes into the waters, goes into the land, and it moves along the highway of the moving water. So you're infecting energies, negative, dangerous, demonic, low frequencies into a beautiful high frequency land, a beautiful high frequency pathway of a meridian through the earth, which is the ley lines, the song lines. And Rachel's, actually, that's another one for you to look up, Lay Love Down, reversing this horrible stuff that's put into the
Yeah,
energies of the earth to keep the earth down low. So
yeah.
with these hospitals and mental institutions and prisons and companies
Churches,
and stuff, churches, they're built on ley lines specifically, and that's again from the Masonic education, that they know exactly where, with the help from some of the
I want to say
occult practices. Yeah.
the word ley, Ley, is a Spanish word for law. So therefore, they put the law into the land, the
They changed the law.
LAW, whereas we might want to call them dragon lines, which are much more like Mother Earth's blessed
The song
body.
lines. Yeah.
And yeah, the song lines again with the
Yeah.
frequency. Yeah, because I was also used in an open grave ritual, which was on a ley line. So,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
and they do that to upset the earth, to put the negative energy, even the law. And this is where I actually feel that they often will tie legislation into their rituals to give it power. But I'm the only one that I've really heard of that really knows that. I don't
Yeah.
haven't heard
Well,
anybody else
whoever
saying that.
I was whoever I was listening to was also saying, oh, it was Jeanette Archer, because when they would do a lot of the rituals uh on the royal lands, the hunts, and they would take the children to the river. So they'd take you in towards a river in a natural sort of gully, and they would do the rituals by the river. Then the blood would be let. So you traumatize, again, horrific stuff. You traumatize a child or children. The blood gets adrenalized with that fear and torture and horror, and that energy then drips. So the blood is then put into the waters, and so then the memory is merged with the adrenalized blood into the waters. So that changes the law of the land, the lay of the land. So
Yeah,
it's honestly, people, it's been going on longer than you can even fathom, and that's what
yeah,
we're bringing to the light of day. We're bringing it to the light of day, bringing the heavy darkness up and the secret out to the surface, to put the light on it, to expose it, to end it, because it's
yeah,
gone on far too long, and a lot of blood has been lost, a lot of torture has been done, and a lot of pain has been um,
yeah.
perpetuated on
Even in
these
the
children
war,
and
like
and
this
wars. Yeah,
war is it's a great big satanic ritual, and
yeah,
all of that blood on the land. And when you are aware of the ancestors and the spirits and the things that are on the land, and there's still warring that's going on and all of that, because it still has never been laid to rest, because it's really held this this energy, and that we can actually affect these and help return it back to the beauty of the natural earth,
Yeah.
and then you start to see the reflections of beauty and everything coming back, like I just, what Rachel Vaughan was saying is that often even the trees that live on leylons look tormented because of what's gone into that ley. So yeah, we
And if
can be
it's been a
empowered.
beautiful, untouched ley line, the trees are
Mm.
vibrant and even more sort of beautiful and more,
Yeah,
um, yeah. Oh,
yeah,
man, there's so much that there is so much actually to talk about, but I I want to discuss Wetico a little bit more because, as you can see, Poppy's experiences of not being believed within the system, with such a huge story of her truth, her experience, and having trying to educate, which I do believe that SRA survivors and anyone with trauma is trying to educate humanity and systems to grow our knowledge base and our experience on, and then on, and how we treat people that are coming with experiences that are outside the box, and that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to move the parameters of the box to grow as humanity has all of its changes. We do that with the children that are coming out with the conditions that we're going to give labels to, like autistic and Asperger's and all that kind of thing. We've moved our parameters out to be inclusive, and we have to do the same with mental health in all aspects. We need to start listening more and stop narrowing it down from a playbook from the hospitals and the medical that has been written so long ago, and written with the keeping people in low
dumbed down.
frequency, yeah, dumbed down, and keeping them in their trauma,
Mm.
because you haven't realized that these systems have been infiltrated and taken over by these horrible occult mind control
Because
Nazis. Will actually say that word because a lot of them have come out of the Nazi era of doing experimentation on people. And this is the problem, is that nobody wants to believe it. Nobody wants to acknowledge it, but you can follow the paper trails and these names of these families. The CEOs of a lot of these companies will have their bloodlines going back um, through to ones that have come straight out of Germany and straight into CIAs and different other organizations around the world, and been sent off across the globe to
yeah,
be the pioneers, like your family that came, out of England and into Masonic lodges and all of the early pioneering places in the world, and to carry on this sort of programs and
yeah.
and
Because these
carry
are
out the wishes of the club that you
yeah.
do not want to belong to.
Because this
Um,
is a psychological operation which belongs to the patriarchy. So, like when I had all that time, which I needed to myself, to listen to myself, meditation, I just I'm one of the biggest meditators that I know, to actually come back and connect with nature. So this actually undoes all of that, and then we start to re-access our innate human gifts, and it happens in nature. So we all can be empathetic, we can all be psychic, we can all be telepathic, we can all be clairaudient, we can all be um, clairvoyant, and we can all be clairsentient. And these are actually the natural human state, without all the psychological operations, without all the unnatural stuff, without all of the that sort of part. These are the tools that I have reclaimed within myself that are actually making me heal. They are making me whole. I am becoming whole as I reclaim my innate gifts that are our human gifts that humanity has lost to that patriarchal left brain system. So a lot of it is still coming back into our femininity as well, and having the balance of the two. Like, what I discovered is that with the heart attack, I had a massive lack of yin energy. So I went to an acupuncturist. So the yin energy is actually like your feminine heart receiving energy. I had a massive lack of that. Mine was all like, oh, my heart was, what will I do? And how am I going to love? And how am I going to pour my love out on you? And that was been a lifelong thing. I was programmed for that. So, of course, that meant just terrible chronic insomnia has been a part of my life, because that's the yin heart energy, which is part of the balance. It's the femininity, it's the feminine. Because for me, it was dangerous. There's been still programming to do that. To be loved is to be dangerous, because my parents sold me. My parents got me involved in all of that, and they were the ones that were supposed to love me. So, things have been a bit inverted for me. And so now I'm choosing to open and trust. I'm pouring my own love on me. But part of the reason I had the heart attack was because I felt so abandoned and so isolated. I don't have a loving presence around me apart from my beautiful cat. I didn't have that human love. My cat couldn't make me a meal or a soup when I had a paralyzed arm, and when I didn't actually have the physical strength to look after myself, all of that. And it's like I was just like feeling more and more devastated. I even tried to sort of reach out to some people, and it's like people don't want to know. They don't want to know about satanic ritual abuse because it doesn't exist. They can't see how someone is left abandoned and suffering. You don't have your family because they're dangerous. And if anybody in the family does come across, they need to be absolutely protected. So, so, oh gosh, where was I? Yeah, this to be able to receive love. So I've had to just pour my own love. Like, I'm capable of loving so much. I've just loved this world so much. I want to share the knowledge that helps us to become free and all of that. But to give it to myself has been, it was something I never learned, something I never ever. And it's amazing how things can get missed. There's a big coordination of how all of these energies just get in, like they always want to get through any little crack of fear, of doubt, of disbelief. They're there in an instant. So yeah.
Yeah. I'll go back a little bit to that, Wetico, because that's exactly what happens is with this trauma that's here, and with this crack, that the cracks that appear, and with the ones that just the general ones, but also the ones that are sent and programmed onto people, like they were with Poppy and many other MK Ultra children. There's actually a bit of a thing at the moment. Well, it's not even at the moment. It's been going on that these people that have been puppeted by principalities or have these cracks that allow these principalities to really get in and take over the mind and shape people's behaviors. And that's what we're seeing about when people are out there in the public doing quite unusual things. You've got to wonder, why are they doing these unusual things? Why would they do horrific things and make laws? Like, I'm thinking of a certain politician that we've had in New Zealand that have divided nations around the world, and you're a part of you is definitely going, that doesn't feel like, that's off, that's really odd behavior. Like, why can't they see how off their behavior is, and all that sort of COVID stuff that we went through, and all the division and all of the mandates and all of the crimes against humanity. It's because they've been MK Ultra'd, and
Yeah.
they've been by, and we're talking MK Ultra by physical people in the Masonic and the occult, but then those people have been puppeted by these entities that get into their cracks through
Yes.
their satanic ritual worship of these principalities, these bigger demonic spirits. We're talking Baal, Baphomet,
And their agreement through their oaths and their creeds.
yeah. So they're tied in and hooked in and puppeted and now being directed. So they're not of their own mind and not of their own body and not of their own soul. They're co-opted and corrupted. And that can happen to all of us. So that's a demonstration globally of what it looks like when principality.
A demonstration.
Yeah, a demonstration. Very good. Very good. A principality has taken hold of. Think again, like again, I'll just use the tadpole analogy because you can see it sucks on. So a principality will suck onto and get through into. There's a whole other thing we can talk about bloodlines and
Oh gosh.
reptilians and things like that, but we'll talk about our own Wetico. So coming back to my own experience with Wetico is through my life, thinking that a lot of my emotional traumas, well, they were my emotional traumas, they were related to my experience, but that my mind, like you were talking about, are these voices my own that start to come in with some really horrible self-talk, some really horrible not just self-talk, but self-direction, like a lot of the suicidal programs that come with these entities and parasites. They really fuck with your mind, and they distort your own insecurities. So if you've got a low self-esteem, if you've got a fears of I'm never going to be loved, or I've been abandoned, or I've been hurt, I've been, for mine, it was being given up for adoption, and divorces with my parents, and having my family ripped apart, and everybody's got these sort of traumas that sit here in the body, and you have your mind talk about it to yourself, your beliefs, you're trying to understand yourself. Then you get the suckers that come in and suck onto that, and that they end up actually, just like any connection, think about a Wi-Fi connection, you got information moving back and forward. So you're not just having something suck onto your information of your own thoughts and beliefs, you're now having an opening where information can come in and feed you different thoughts and beliefs, and more devastating thoughts and beliefs. Think of it like a volume button on your insecurities. It's really cleverly done, and that is MK Ultra from entity. Okay, so MK Ultra from CIA, from Nazi programming, from all that, looks like people doing these things, but they are having entities control their behavior to put in place MK Ultra programs. So again, look up MK Ultra. It's too big to explain right here. Mind control programming, and again, experimentation on how to fractalize the mind and how to make all these parts separated. So in the general person, your separation will be the part of you that feels confident versus the part of you that doesn't feel confident. There'll be polarity. You'll have the part of you that feels loved, and then another part of you at times doesn't feel loved. Okay, you'll have the part of you that believes in yourself and the part of you that doesn't believe in yourself. So you're you're naturally fracturing just by growing up and having experiences that put all these parts separated inside you. And what happens is when these Wetico come in, they've had me try to take my life, try
Yeah.
to take myself out of this world. And one of the ways they can do it is in the dream space and also in the waking space with your thoughts. So just like Poppy identified, whoa, that was a really negative self-talk, like just kind of like look at that for a minute and
Mm.
just really pull yourself back to your center, which is actually, I don't 100% believe that thought. That's just me having that thought, but I'm having that thought on a really turned up scale, like from 1 to 100, it's like 100. It's like really self-loathing, really self-destructive thought. Okay. And that's taking over everybody out there. You look out there at humanity right now, and I guarantee you, everybody you look at is experiencing Wetico driving their behavior through their beliefs of themselves and their thoughts of themselves. And they think it's wholly and solely themselves. And it is their wounded child, it is their trauma parts, but it has this attachment that is influencing their thoughts and influencing their behavior and turning it up. And it is really destructive because it is getting people turning towards addictions, food, drink, drugs, sex, shopping, gambling, work, all sorts of addictions, love addiction, and trying to pacify ourselves and move through these really horrible mind chatters and mind talk. And one of the things that Wetico do in the dream space is they will have you dreaming a nightmare, and it will be replacing the face of somebody that's hurting you in your nightmare with somebody you know and love, so that you build a doubt and a fear that that person really loves you, or that maybe that person is actually working against you. So this paranoia, this is where you get paranoid schizophrenia. That's that label. But what it is the Wetico working its magic, and it's occult magic, that you are now having thoughts and beliefs that are swirling away with your own self-confidence and self-esteem and self-love. So one of the recent ones, so Poppy's just held that up. What is the concept of Wetico? In its Native American meaning, Wetico is an evil cannibalistic spirit that can take over people's minds, leading to selfishness, insatiable greed, and consumption as an end in itself. Move it up a bit. And yeah, so
Oh,
we're
destructively.
destructively turning our intrinsic creative genius against our own humanity. So we could do a whole video on Wetico, but I really want the takeaway from this is to start putting inquiry. Sorry, I was just going to say about that nightmare. So recently, Wetico has been with us throughout humanity, throughout the eons of time, to infiltrate and manipulate the crowd, the what do they call it? The hive mentality,
Mm.
to sort of come to the same beliefs and come to the same low frequency, to take away that genius, to take away the power of the individual connection to source, to take away the power of self-love, to take away our power to love our community and be loved. So giving and receiving love. Love has been the greatest force. So they're going to squash that down and keep you down in the feelings of self-hate, self-loathing, fear that you're not loved, you're not worthy, all these sorts of beliefs. And they do start, like I say, from your own childhood traumas, but then they get really feasted upon and manipulated and turned against you. So I know that it's going out really massively at the moment because those that have been trying to puppet humanity are losing control of us because we are waking up and exposing some of these secret societies and horrific things that have been going on. We're pulling down people, we're arresting people, we're stripping people of their roles in governments. People, you don't even know half of the people that are being taken out of their jobs because we just don't get it exposed to us on the news. But a lot of people are being pulled out of roles of power, roles of, like I say, some of these CEOs that have been found out to be trafficking or pedophiles or harvesting organs and all sorts of horrific things. So there's a sort of a massive wave of Wetico that's amped up at the moment, and it's really to try its very level best at kind of a last hurrah to bring humanity and keep it down into a low frequency. So this is why we need discernment and awareness, and we need to talk about Wetico and entity attachment so that is this me, is this not me, and how to break free from it. So the one example I'll say is I've been pretty good for a long time in my dream space. There's a lot that I've had to overcome in my dream space and get my own sovereignty and strengthen that shell, so that nothing can penetrate through our vulnerable minds while we're sleeping. But one of the things that shocked me the other night was a friend in my dream. The dream went like this. My friend was giving me a glass of water, and she's my friend, so I took a sip. But what happened is she didn't take the glass away. She started forcing that water down my throat. When you've got it so pressed into your lips. This is a terrifying dream. I haven't had terror in a long time.
Oh gosh.
So this beautiful girl who is in my life at the moment, who's lovely, literally won't hurt a fly, was forcing this water down, and I was gurgling and drowning in my sleep. Now I cottoned on. I had the self-awareness of my soul to go and have the strength to push it away. And as I pushed it away, her face transformed into not my friend and into a monster, and I woke myself up and I didn't go back to sleep. So our dream spaces are really vulnerable, and we need to have that awareness that if they can't get you through the day because you're waking up, you're cottoning on, they can really attack you through the dream space, and they always have, and they've attacked children and they've attacked you, and you might not even realize it. You might just wake up in a sort of a adrenalized body where you not even realize that you didn't have a very good sleep and your mind was really having some bad dreams. But what the good news is, we're coming to the end of this video, is that with this awareness and these conversations, and please get in touch if you want to have one-on-one conversations where we can listen to your story and give you tips on how to strengthen your eggshell and release the emotional trauma that has any entity attached to it, and reclaim and rebuke your consent. So that's the biggest word that we've got for you right now is consent. I do not consent to any entity attachment, artificial intelligent program, frequencies that might be coming at me from any forces, devices, programming that's in any of the Facebook feeds or any of the mobile phone frequencies or towers, or just even out in space, what do we call those things? The satellites, and sort of, and just the prayers from the occult, and all of the desperate measures that they have to really try to just keep everybody's frequency low and humanity down in a dark and sad and tormented place. Okay, so we've got tools, we've got many, many, many tools, and we're waking up to how to remember them and use them and implement them. And the biggest one that Poppy and a lot of SRA survivors are using is things like the journey therapy, which I can talk to you one-on-one about. Poppy can talk to you one-on-one about, because as you do release the emotional traumas, you really do integrate these parts of you that have been separated and fractalized, and you sort of really do put yourself back together, so that the younger you, the child that was emotionally traumatized at whatever age you were, doesn't have to be SRA, but just from whatever your own experiences are, that got stuck and arrested, can start to grow up and be released from your body, so that this present day body, present day mind, can be the one that's really in charge and driving you. And it has what we're doing is giving you more information on how to restore your source connection, because while you've got your energy fractured and your siphoning happening from these little suckers, and Wetico coming in to undermine your own insecurities and thoughts and keep you down in your lowest self, you haven't got the strength, you haven't got the energy to really connect again with your source, God, Jesus, earth, however you want to call that, pure connection to your soul line. But we've got the tools, humanity, I mean, not just me and Poppy. Poppy and I are utilizing a lot of those tools, and we can speak from them firsthand. And yeah, so Wetico is definitely amped up, and as soon as you start to just acknowledge low thoughts and low feelings, you can just ask the body a question: is this mine, or can I let this go? Is this mine? And you start to sharpen your own intuition of getting your yeses and your nos. And when you really befriend your intuition, your body's intuition, your messages from your intuition, then your mind can really start to trust your body. Like Poppy said, all of the pain is held in the body, all of the memory of all of the pain is stored in the body. Even if you haven't, even if your memory's been blocked or wiped or suppressed or, put into the subconscious, the body remembers all this stuff, and the body is crying out to have our help, which is to protect it, and to release it from the traumas that it's been holding on to, so that it can strengthen its source connection. And when you do, it actually makes the magnet of you repelling these energies. Okay, so while you've got a trauma, you've got an attraction magnet. Okay, people are suffering, going, why am I always having these bad situations and relationships and work and with money and lack of funds and lack of love? And it's because the magnet, firstly, your own emotional trauma is like a magnet. It is drawing experiences to you so that you can heal through that and behave differently to support yourself. But also with these attachments on, it means that it'll keep you looping in this magnetic field, this magnetic resonance of trauma, that will attract more of this sort of hardship and people that don't believe you, and people that will harm you, and people that will rob you and cheat you and lie, and it'll just keep you experiencing similar traumas again and again and again. So the key to it is to get your emotions freed up and release your pain from your past, and to strengthen and rebuke consent to these emotional and mind viruses of Wetico and entity attachments, and absolutely send a message to principalities that they do not have any authority over your body, mind, and soul. And that
Yeah.
one person at a time doing that means that these little parasites just have nothing other to do than
Yeah.
float away, really, because they can't be attaching to us.
So yeah, I just want to say, you told me something too, you know, like we all have a frequency, we're born with a frequency, and then these all of the trauma will happen, and that keeps our vibration in a certain state. So our vibration is a frequency as well, and that frequency of that vibration attracts what's in that like most like
Bandwidth.
that bandwidth. Yeah. So so there's a sort of a trap that some people have. It's like, I've got to be grateful and I've got to be positive all the time, you know.
Oh yeah.
We all know that when we are naturally in that state of gratitude, naturally, that's really powerful. But when we try to generate it, you know, what's at the bottom, the trauma or the emotions at the bottom are left untended, and that keeps the vibration down. So
Yeah. It's the
it's actually
magnet.
like a bit of a dance in that, okay, right, here I've got this thick energy that's right here. This is really, really coming up. And I need to get and express out this thing so that I can detox myself from it.
Yes.
And then my vibration rises up, because I used to always get the opposite for what I asked for because of the inversion and also the inversions within the programming. So I would ask, you know, or try to, you know, when I was working with this idea, this new age idea of manifesting, which I don't actually go for. I would
Trying to
often,
control it.
yeah, I would often get something else. And so now I just work with source and nature to materialize what's needed in connection. But it's actually the actual connection that I have with them that gives me the and that gives me the oomph and the energy to be held to face what's underneath. And also, like with SRA, like a lot of people, we can go through and we can revisit our traumas, but with SRA, they're so horrific, they're so unfathomable, so incomprehensible. I can only say how grateful I am just to have someone who could be there to witness it. Like, I don't give all the terribly gory details, I do give some, but someone that's strong enough to witness that. And so it's really about being so real with ourselves. What is happening right now? What is this intuition? You know, because at the moment, you know, we're experiencing these cosmic waves that come in, the cosmic light codes that come in. So at the moment now, you know, like we've just gone into a new cycle, there's going to be a lot of ferocious energy out there. There's going to be a lot of emotion that's going on. And this is actually an opportunity that if we know how to be with that we can be constructive and safe with that and let the expression come up. We can raise our vibration and we just make this world a better place. And, you know, the Wetico can't get in that. And we do come out because, like, I'm starting to experience life quite differently after doing probably a good 10 months of journey work now. I'm actually seeing the physical changes in my body, and oh my gosh, they're just so welcome. And not to have my energy siphoned like it was. I found out all the places where it's been taken, siphoned. You know, like for me, when someone's doing black magic or whatever it is behind the scenes, because this is what they do in this Masonic world, I actually feel a heat that will come in, and it could be absolutely stony cold, but I'll be almost sweating because of that. And it's also alerted me, and that will happen at night. And then, you know, like I know, you know, I just hold myself. I don't even worry about it anymore, because honestly, I've done so much work now. It has got really strong. Yes, I did have my guard down. Yes, I did get a kind of attack, but lots of good came out of that. Um, Everything that they throw at us that does get us can be turned around for good if we are awake, if we are aware, and if we are really dedicated on increasing our vibration to match our innate frequency, reclaim all our gifts, and really launch forward in the fullness of humanity. For so long I was so cut up about, not, being a ripe age and never having had my own life, always being subjected to the will of theirs, not living by my will, but theirs, not, that my power was actually used for their purposes and not mine. Um, so yeah, it's a new beginning for me, because it's the first time in my life where my power is my power and my will is my will, and I choose to align that with the cosmic will of the universe, of um of the heavenly father, the earthly mother, of source itself. um and it does make life really meaningful. So we need, people don't need to be scared of satanic ritual abuse. Okay, we just had to face the denser and darker spectrums of the shadow than most people did. And we all have to. And if anything, speaking from the perspective of someone who has been through satanic ritual abuse, then we had to work it out. We simply had to work it out. And these are guidelines for all of humanity. Like, we might have had the direct MK Ultra experience, but everybody's now having results from all the experimentation that they did on us and how they
Yeah,
could psychologically control us. Everybody, through the AI, all of that. So, I just want to say love, source, nature, you know, let's live you know, raise our vibrations, do that work. Um, and for every single one of us, the effect that we have on the principality of death, for example, it just disempowers it, disempowers it, disempowers it. So everyone that's doing this work of dealing with the entity or the invisible realms in one spectrum, because we can tune into the bandwidth, even with our eyesight. You tune in, and then the next thing you're seeing, you actually see, like, almost like it's on a movie screen. But we all have a different way. It's the same. If you're clairaudient, then you tune into that bandwidth where that mentoring voice will come in and give you the best possible advice. So
yeah,
it's very
yeah.
energetic. All of it is energetic.
And you're quite right about at the moment our abilities with the codes from the sun that are waking our abilities up of discernment and senses and extra senses. We can even look to the people in our lives or out there in our world and actually spot the moment that the principality is really taking hold of their words towards us or towards a body of people, or their Wetico is really sabotaging them. And with that awareness, even we can say to people, are you okay? This is a really negative self-talk. I don't think that this is completely all you, like just opening up some bigger conversations, having the courage to talk to people about entity attachment to other people when they're suffering in a cycle and in a loop. So we're so from the people that are even watching this video, you are the aware ones. You can see about yourself now, and you can start to see about others, and you can start to see that the human that you're looking at isn't just the human that you're looking at. There is all these programs in there. There is all this fracturing going on. There is all this emotional trauma from their childhood. There is all this possible Wetico and demonic and vampiric kind of parasitic realm that is attached. That is, you can see it, especially when people go and have a drink. You can see their behaviors change. Let's not ignore it anymore. Let's get sober. Let's get sober and let's have a conversation and just say, you know, there was that ad, I think it was for a Morrow bar or Mars bar or something, and then the guy was like, "You're not yourself without one of these." But people's behaviors being really
Sugar.
um being corrupted. Yes, sugar's another one. Oh my gosh, we better stop this video because we could go on and on. But um, thank you for listening. Thank you for following the conversation today. Poppy had a lot to get off her chest. She's not done. She's not being supported. I thank you for listening to this conversation. I thank you for actually sharing compassion towards somebody who's trying to put their parts back together and actually doing a really great job. The frustration and the angers towards the systems come from a real place of not being supported, not being believed, being fucked around, having the principalities wreck our lovely healthcare system, destroy it to bits, and have it being an illness system and a even worse than that, taking people down system. And it is falling apart. Poppy's right.
Yeah.
We're going to have to look after each other. We're going to have to give a shit about each other. Listen, take the time to listen. Try to believe from a place that you can. Try to speak from your own experiences with courage that people will care, that will listen, that will believe you. um, look out for these people. Be one of these people, and
Mm,
excuse people when we go on a rant, of emotional release, because that's what we're doing. We've had eons and eons and eons of being suppressed about these things, not allowed to speak about these things. Worse, MK Ultra programs that make you fear for your life if you speak up about these things. And then
mm,
when you do have the courage to speak up, being persecuted by healthcare systems that just want to label you away and medicate you away and pass you off to some other institution. So again, let's just try to listen, and thank you for listening to this great big long video of our personal stories. So have a
yeah.
great day. Reach out. Look at some of the information on my channel called Thrive Nation on Facebook, which does have testimonials from survivors. It's very eye-opening, and you have to have a really open mind to listen and believe their testimonies from these survivors. But what you'll start to see is a theme of these Masonic occult playbooks that got put on through these things like out of the Nazi programs and all of the experimentation and the Tavistock and the mind control. You'll start to see, wow, these are people all around the world, and they do have a similar story. How could that be? So if you've got some courage, jump onto Facebook, Thrive Nation, and just be wide open to hear some other stories as well as Poppy's on there. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Poppy, for sharing so much of your personal journey. And I believe you, and I'm here for you. And we are educating the
Yeah.
systems that were, and
Yeah.
it's
It's
really
really, it's lovely, and I'm just really grateful for the ones, that not only believe, but then they also see you in your current situation now and are there for you like you are. Because otherwise, a survivor is left out in the cold, even though we came here to be this big change and we love so much that we've done this on behalf for many people. Yeah, and thank you to everybody that is actively cleaning up the whole entity field, because for everyone that we deal with, they do get cleared up and cleaned up, and not a single human being has been without entities. We've all had trauma. They've all got in somewhere, and sometimes they're actually entities or hosts that are aggressively attacking other people. So
yeah,
they might be giving power, but all of that will be released and go, and we are going to come
yeah,
into so much more balance and harmony. So thank you
yeah.
for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Poppy.